The next thing I want to talk about is Jahmyr Gibbs. He's one of my favorite rookies coming into this season. He was drafted 12th overall by Detroit. And when Detroit came on the clock and some of the announcers were speculating who the pick could be, one of the analysts said that the Detroit Lions were looking to add more explosiveness on the offense. And as soon as I heard that, I was telling all my homeboys who I was watching the draft with, watch them draft Jahmyr Gibbs. And a couple of minutes later, they ended up taking Jahmyr Gibbs. And a lot of people really didn't understand this pick. They weren't really on board with it. But I was talking with my guy, Luke G. If you guys didn't see the previous episode that me and Luke G did on the podcast together, go ahead and watch that very good episode. He said that he wouldn't be surprised if Detroit took a running back in the first round. And ideally, he said that he wouldn't be surprised if the pick was Bijan Robinson. Now, we already know that the Detroit Lions ended up trading down and they ended up getting more picks in the process. But drafting Jahmyr Gibbs, I think, was a fantastic get for the Detroit Lions. This is somebody who is greatly going to elevate this offense. He has elite speed, acceleration, he has fantastic hands, and he's a great route runner for a running back. This is somebody who you can line up at pretty much every position on the offensive side of the football, or nearly every position. Not only can he play running back, but you can line him in the slot, or you can put him out wide. He's that good of a route runner that he can run pretty good routes against defensive backs. He can create good separation against cornerbacks. And plus, this guy ran a 4.36 at the 40-yard dash at the combine. So you have to think about that elite speed. And when you think about their offensive coordinator, right? He was getting a lot of interviews for head coaching jobs. And he returns for another season in Detroit. And we can pretty much expect this to be his last year in Detroit because he's so good and so creative as an offensive mind that if Detroit ends up being as good as what a lot of people believe they will be, he probably is going to be a head coach sometime next year. When you think about his creativity and how he's able to make the most out of his personnel, he puts players in the right situations to succeed. I'm expecting Jahmyr Gibbs to explode year one in his rookie season with the Detroit Lions. This dude is going to be a beast on third down for the Detroit Lions whenever they get put in a bind. If you go back and you watch him at Alabama last year, him and Bryce Young pretty much carried Alabama's offense. It was either Bryce Young making a fantastic play or Jahmyr Gibbs making a big explosive run or having a big catch on third down to keep the chains moving for the Tide last year. And going into the NFL, he's been getting a lot of comparisons to Alvin Kamara because him and Alvin Kamara have a really similar skill set. You know, Alvin Kamara is really good catching the ball out of the backfield. He also has elite acceleration. When Alvin Kamara turns the corner, he doesn't really sacrifice a lot of speed. And then you have to think about this. When Jameson Williams comes back, you're going to have him. You're going to have Jahmyr Gibbs. You're going to have Amon-Ra St. Brown. You're going to have a top 5 offensive line. Like, this is going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL this season. And then also take this into account. You do have David Montgomery, so David Montgomery and Gibbs are going to split a good amount of the carries. We already know that Jahmyr Gibbs probably isn't going to get much work on the goal line. He isn't really built to be a goal line back. He probably isn't going to be in when they're asking him to block because he's not the greatest blocker. As a matter of fact, I think that's one of his weaknesses is that he's not really good in pass pro. So David Montgomery is probably going to get a large amount of the workload. But you look at Jahmyr Gibbs, though, he's still going to have a big impact because of what he can do in the passing game and his explosiveness. This dude is way more explosive than David Montgomery. Although David Montgomery is going to be doing most of the dirty work at running back for Detroit, pass protection, running in between the tackles. Jahmyr Gibbs isn't really that kind of runner. Even though he does have the capability of being able to run inside the tackles, it's just that with his body type, you don't really know if he's going to be able to hold up. So for the most part, David Montgomery still is going to be getting a good amount of the workload in this Lions offense. But Jahmyr Gibbs, though, when he does end up being put on the field for Detroit, they're going to put him in some really good situations that's going to create mismatches. Just think about it. If you put Jahmyr Gibbs at running back on third down, he's coming out wide. How many linebackers are going to be able to cover this guy? Because he is a fantastic route runner for a running back. You don't really see running backs that have this kind of route running very often. And I know that the NFL is starting to transition to more of the scat back kind of running back, where you want a running back who also can be explosive running the football, but also can be like your third or fourth best wide receiver when he's on the field. That's Jahmyr Gibbs. And that's a mismatch for linebackers, because how many linebackers are good enough to cover Jahmyr Gibbs in one-on-one situations? Not too many. And then if you line them out wide, let's say if you want to put them in the slot and you want to move Amon-Ra outside, if you put them matched up against a defensive back that's playing the slot, either a slot cornerback or you got a safety that's playing in the slot, I don't really think it's too many defensive backs in the slot who are going to be able to stop Jahmyr Gibbs, neither, because this guy is so fast, so explosive, and so shifty. It's really hard for defensive coordinators to come up with a game plan to slow this man down. So the Detroit Lions have a chess piece that they can just move around all over the offense. You already saw the play that they had last year when they had their right tackle, Penei Sewell, coming in motion and catching a critical first down to keep the drive alive for Detroit. So if their offensive coordinator has this level of creativity, giving him a player like Jahmyr Gibbs that has this kind of skill set is only going to make the Detroit Lions offense even harder to stop and even more difficult to game plan for opposing defensive coordinators. Like, I really loved the Detroit Lions drafting Jahmyr Gibbs. Like, I don't know how many of you guys are thrilled about this, but I'm expecting Jahmyr Gibbs to have a phenomenal rookie season for the Detroit Lions. Now, is he going to put up the kind of numbers that Alvin Kamara did his rookie season? I'm not really sure about that, because David Montgomery is a really talented running back. I'm pretty sure he's going to get way more carries than Jahmyr Gibbs, but a lot of Jahmyr Gibbs' damage is going to come from what he's going to do in the passing game. This guy is a home run ready to happen. Anytime he puts his hands on the football, he's a threat to take it to the crib every single time. That's how much of a beast this man is. And I watched pretty much every single game of Alabama football last year in 2022, and I know that Jahmyr Gibbs, without a doubt, is going to have a big part in this Detroit Lions offense. Like, people think that you need to be a workhorse RB to be effective in the NFL, and that's not true. Like, we've seen plenty of occasions where teams running two running back systems have been successful. As a matter of fact, like, what team right now doesn't have two or three running backs on their roster that they rotate in and out of the lineup? There's not too many teams that have a RB1 that just completely gets everything. Other than Derrick Henry, that may be it. So for Jahmyr Gibbs going to the Detroit Lions with their offensive coordinator and the kind of talent that they have around them, I think this offense is going to be one of the best offenses in the NFL. When Jameson Williams comes back, this offense is going to be really nasty. Like, for everybody who thinks that Detroit is overrated, really look at this team. Look at what they did this offseason to improve this roster. There's no way you can tell me that Detroit shouldn't at least be a lock to make it to the playoffs this year. I mean, this offense is going to be super dynamic and explosive this year. And you add a playmaker like Jahmyr Gibbs at the helm, it only makes this offense even more dangerous. Let's talk about another rookie that is turning a lot of heads right now.